Jason had never been the paranoid type. He wasn't the kind of man who scrolled through his wife's phone when she wasn't looking or grilled her about her whereabouts. Their marriage had been built on trust, at least, that's what he believed. But over the past few months, something had shifted. Mia had become distant. It started with small things, cancelled dinner plans, vague explanations about why she was coming home late, the way she turned her phone screen away when he walked into the room. He told himself it was nothing. Stress, maybe. Work had been demanding for both of them. Then came the excuses. She was always exhausted, brushing off his attempts at intimacy with tired smiles and murmured apologies. When had that changed? They used to be passionate, unable to keep their hands off each other. Now, she barely even touched him. The whispered phone calls were harder to ignore. Jason would enter the room, and Mia's voice would drop, her body stiffening as if she had been caught in something she shouldn't have been doing. The moment he got close, she would end the call with an abrupt, "I'll talk to you later." When he asked who it was, her answers were always the same, just a friend, just her sister, just someone from work. But people didn't whisper to their sisters like that. Then came the final straw. Jason hadn't been looking for anything. He wasn't suspicious enough to snoop, at least not yet. But as he reached into Mia's purse one evening to grab her car keys, his fingers brushed against something unfamiliar. A slim, plastic card. A hotel keycard. It sat in his palm like a ticking bomb. There was no business trip, no reason she should have something like this. His heartbeat thundered in his ears as he placed it back exactly as he had found it, pretending nothing had changed. But everything had. Jason knew he had two choices: confront her and listen to whatever excuse she would spin, or find out the truth himself. He chose the latter. That Friday, Mia told him she had dinner plans with some friends. Jason forced a smile, kissed her on the cheek, and waited until she left. Then, he followed her. His stomach twisted as he watched her car pull into the parking lot of a downtown hotel. Not a restaurant. Not a friend's house. A hotel. She stepped out, glancing around as if checking for familiar faces, before making her way inside. Jason stayed in his car, gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. Maybe she was meeting a friend who was visiting from out of town. Maybe there was some explanation he hadn't considered. Then he saw him. Ethan. Jason hadn't seen him in years, but he recognized the man immediately. Tall, well-dressed, that same cocky grin he always had when Mia talked about him, the old friend from college she swore had never been anything more. Except now, Ethan wasn't just a friend. Through the hotel's large glass windows, Jason watched as Mia greeted him. Not with the awkward hug of two old friends catching up. No, this was different. Intimate. Familiar. She tilted her head up, her hands resting on Ethan's chest as he leaned down to kiss her. A real kiss. Not the kind of peck she had been giving Jason lately. Jason felt his stomach drop, like the ground beneath him had suddenly vanished. He couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything except watch the woman he loved walk away with another man. She had been lying to him. All those nights she came home late, the whispered phone calls, the sudden loss of interest in him, it all made sense now. Jason sat there for a long time, staring at the hotel doors as if she might walk out at any moment and undo what he had just seen. But she didn't. She wasn't coming home anytime soon. When Jason finally drove away, his hands were shaking. He didn't remember the drive, didn't remember parking in front of their house, but suddenly, he was standing in the darkened living room, feeling like a stranger in his own home. The couch where they had watched movies together, the framed wedding photos lining the shelves, it all felt like a cruel joke. By the time Mia came home that night, Jason was waiting for her. He had played this moment out in his mind over and over again, wondering what she would say. Would she deny it? Try to gaslight him into believing he had imagined everything? Or would she break down, crying, apologizing, begging for forgiveness. She did none of those things. Instead, the second he mentioned Ethan's name, she gasped. Her hand flew to her stomach, her eyes wide with panic. "I'm pregnant, Jason." The words hung in the air like poison. Jason had prepared himself for lies. He had expected excuses, maybe even fake remorse. But this? This was something else entirely. Jason stared at Mia, her words hanging in the air between them like a carefully laid trap. Pregnant. The timing was too convenient. He had spent months feeling her slip away, watching her become more distant, more secretive. Then he had caught her, exposed the lie she had been weaving. And now, suddenly, she was carrying his child. Mia's face was a mask of carefully controlled emotions, but Jason knew her too well. He had seen her lie before, small, harmless ones, like saying she hadn't finished the last slice of cake when he knew she had, or pretending to like a movie just to avoid an argument. But this was different. This was calculated. She clutched her stomach as if to convince herself as much as him. Her voice wavered as she launched into an emotional monologue, painting herself as the victim of a terrible mistake. She had been confused, she said. The loneliness had gotten to her. He had been distant, preoccupied with work, and she had felt unwanted. Ethan had been a mistake, a lapse in judgment, a moment of weakness. But this baby? This was real. This was theirs. Jason didn't buy a word of it. If she had really wanted to fix things, she would have confessed before he caught her sneaking around with another man. She wouldn't have met Ethan in a hotel, wouldn't have kissed him with the kind of passion she hadn't shown Jason in months. And she certainly wouldn't have pulled out the ultimate manipulation card the second she was backed into a corner. He demanded proof. Mia recoiled at the suggestion of a paternity test, her outrage carefully constructed. She called him paranoid, accused him of ruining their marriage with his constant distrust. How could he question her like this, after everything? But Jason had already started his own investigation. He wasn't going to sit around, drowning in her lies while she bought herself time. He contacted an old friend, a doctor who owed him a favor. A simple inquiry, a name run through the system. Mia hadn't even had a prenatal checkup. No blood work. No ultrasounds. No medical history indicating a pregnancy. She had nothing. Jason sat with that knowledge for days, pretending he still had doubts, letting her think she was keeping him on edge. He watched as she carefully played her part, rubbing her stomach absent-mindedly when she thought he was looking, making a show of being nauseous in the mornings. She even started avoiding alcohol at social events, as if she had truly committed to the lie. And then he saw the real reason she was dragging this out. Ethan. Jason had started paying attention, noting how Mia's behavior changed whenever she was on her phone. She was waiting for something, for someone. The pieces started falling into place. Ethan was married. Jason had met the woman once at a college reunion, Laura. Pretty, sweet, the type of woman who didn't deserve to have her life shattered by betrayal. It didn't take long to confirm what he suspected. Ethan wasn't just sneaking around with Mia, he was also stalling. Jason's guess. Ethan had promised Mia that he would leave his wife, but he wasn't ready to blow up his own life just yet. Mia, in turn, needed time to keep Jason from walking away before Ethan was available. And what better way to buy time than a fake pregnancy? Jason felt his stomach churn at the realization. His wife, had chosen to manipulate him into staying, had played on the one thing she thought he would never turn his back on. A child. It was disgusting. Now, it wasn't just about confronting her. It was about taking control. If Mia wanted to play games, Jason would show her exactly what happened when she underestimated him. Jason had every reason to walk away. He could have packed a bag, filed for divorce, and left Mia and Ethan to their pathetic little affair. Let them deal with the wreckage of their own choices. But that wasn't enough. Mia had looked him in the eye and lied. She had stolen months of his life with deception, had played on his emotions, and had used something as sacred as a child to manipulate him. She had taken him for a fool, assuming he would stay shackled to a fake promise while she figured out if Ethan was worth destroying their marriage for. No, Jason wouldn't leave quietly. He wanted to watch the truth burn her world down. So he played along. At first, he let Mia believe she had won. He acted overjoyed at the pregnancy, the devoted husband ready to embrace fatherhood. He held her close when she fake gagged over her morning sickness, rubbed her back when she sighed about pregnancy cravings, and even suggested baby names over dinner. The first time he brought up the idea of a baby announcement party, Mia hesitated. He caught the flicker of panic in her eyes, the subtle tightening of her jaw before she forced out a smile. But what excuse could she make? Saying no would only raise suspicions. She had no choice but to agree. Jason spared no expense. He made sure the event was grand, booking a venue at the nicest restaurant in town. Invitations were sent to everyone, her parents, her friends, her coworkers. Even people she barely spoke to. No one could miss this. But Jason's true masterpiece was the guest list. He made sure to personally extend an invitation to Ethan's wife, Laura. A warm message, something polite, casual, the kind that wouldn't set off alarms. If Ethan hadn't told his wife about the affair, Jason would make sure she found out in the most spectacular way possible. The preparations moved quickly. Jason ordered elaborate decorations, balloons, banners, centerpieces, all themed for the joyous occasion. He booked a photographer, ensuring every moment would be documented. He even arranged for a cake that would reveal the gender of the baby when cut. Mia had no way out. The night of the party, Jason watched as she forced a smile, her movements stiff with unease. She was surrounded by people offering congratulations, hugging her, gushing about the baby. He could see the beads of sweat forming on her skin, the way she clutched her stomach as if that would make her lie more convincing. She was trapped in her own deceit, and Jason was just getting started. The venue was filled with laughter and conversation, a sea of smiling faces eagerly anticipating the moment that was supposed to be one of the happiest in Jason and Mia's life. The air buzzed with excitement, friends and family chatting about baby names, nursery themes, and how wonderful parenthood would be for them. Mia stood beside Jason, her smile frozen in place, her hands resting on her stomach in a performative display of maternal bliss. But Jason saw through it. The way her fingers trembled slightly, how her eyes kept darting around the room, how she avoided prolonged eye contact with him. She was suffocating under the weight of her own lies. The decorations were perfect, soft pastels and golden accents making everything look like a dream. The cake sat at the center of it all, its pristine surface hiding the anticipated gender reveal moment that, in any other situation, would have been the highlight of the evening. But tonight, it was something far bigger than that. Jason picked up the microphone, his voice calm, steady. He thanked everyone for coming, his tone warm, welcoming, giving no indication of what was about to unfold. He saw Mia take a deep breath, no doubt preparing for whatever speech she thought she would have to give, whatever last-minute improvisation she would need to keep up the charade. She had no idea. Jason reached into his pocket and pulled out a small stack of papers. The real announcement. The moment of truth. The air shifted. Mia's posture stiffened beside him, her forced smile faltering. She sensed it now, the trap closing in. Jason turned to the crowd, his expression unreadable as he raised the papers in his hand. There was no baby. The words hit the room like a bomb. Conversations halted. A hush fell over the guests, their excitement turning into confusion, then disbelief. Mia's face drained of all color. Jason explained, his voice unwavering, how Mia had concocted the pregnancy as a desperate attempt to keep him from leaving. How she had never once visited a doctor. How she had refused a paternity test. How he had gone ahead and checked for himself. There was nothing. No medical records. No prenatal visits. No pregnancy. She had lied to all of them. The silence was deafening, stretching out into something suffocating. Then, before Mia could even react, Jason dropped the second bombshell. She wasn't just lying about the baby. She was lying about everything. Mia's betrayal wasn't just a private matter anymore, it was laid bare for everyone to see. Jason gestured toward Ethan, who up until now had been lurking near the back, trying to stay unnoticed. The moment all eyes turned on him, Ethan's smug confidence cracked. He stood rigid, his face pale as realization hit him like a truck. He wasn't just an accomplice to an affair anymore, he was about to be exposed in front of people who mattered. And then came the final, exquisite piece of the revenge Jason had orchestrated. Ethan's wife, Laura, had been standing near the front, oblivious until now. The moment Jason pointed toward Ethan, she followed his gaze. Confusion flickered in her eyes, then dawning horror. The truth hit her at full force. Laura's expression twisted into something unreadable, grief, rage, humiliation all mixing at once. Then, without hesitation, she raised a hand and struck Ethan across the face, the sound ringing through the stunned silence of the room. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Mia opened her mouth, desperate to salvage something, anything. But there was nothing left to save. She was trapped. Nowhere to run, no words to smooth over the wreckage of the life she had just lost. Jason stood beside her, calm, watching as everything fell apart exactly as he had planned. The silence that followed Jason's announcement was thick, suffocating. It wrapped around the room like a noose, tightening with every second that passed. The guests, once brimming with excitement and joy, now stared in stunned disbelief at the woman who had lied to all of them. Mia stood frozen, her carefully crafted world crumbling around her. Her face was a canvas of shock, humiliation, and sheer panic as she glanced around the room, searching for something, someone, to salvage the situation. But there was nothing. No one. Her parents were the first to react. They had always adored Jason, had always believed their daughter was the devoted wife she pretended to be. Now, faced with the undeniable truth, their expressions darkened with something beyond disappointment. Her mother's hands trembled as she processed the revelation. She had spent weeks knitting baby clothes, cooing over ultrasound photos that never existed. The betrayal wasn't just Jason's to bear, it extended to everyone Mia had deceived. Her father, a man of few words but strong principles, didn't need to say much at all. The look he gave Mia was enough. The silent turning of his back, the stiff posture, the way his jaw clenched with barely restrained fury, it was a message louder than any words could have been. Mia took a step toward them, but hesitation made her falter. Her lips parted as if to speak, but what excuse could she offer? What lie could possibly fix this? Her father didn't wait for an answer. And just like that, the people who had loved her unconditionally, the ones she had always counted on, walked away. Across the room, Ethan was dealing with his own reckoning. His wife, Laura, stood rigid, her face a mask of cold fury. The betrayal had landed like a physical blow, and the weight of it was unbearable. The slap she had delivered still echoed in the air. Ethan, normally so composed, was a mess of stammered apologies and desperate explanations. He reached for her, but she jerked away, her expression twisting in disgust. The realization of what he had lost dawned on him in real time, his marriage, his reputation, his comfortable life, all disintegrating before his eyes. Laura didn't waste another second. She grabbed her purse, her movements sharp and decisive. Without another word, she turned and stormed out, leaving Ethan floundering in her wake. He hesitated, glancing between Mia and the door. The choice before him was clear, stay and deal with the wreckage, or chase after the life he had just destroyed. In the end, he didn't even look back at Mia. Jason watched as Ethan scrambled after his wife, his voice low and pleading. The doors swung shut behind them, leaving Mia standing alone in the ruins of her deception. There was no one left. She turned back to Jason then, her eyes wide, her breath shallow. The mask she had worn for so long had shattered completely. This wasn't the confident, manipulative woman who had strung him along, feeding him lies while she planned her escape. This was someone desperate, drowning, grasping for anything that could keep her afloat. But Jason wasn't here to save her. He had already done what needed to be done. The divorce papers had already been filed. The evidence was already in place. There was nothing left for Mia to bargain with. No cards left for her to play. She had gambled everything. And she had lost. Jason didn't say a word. He didn't need to. His silence was enough, a final, devastating blow to the woman who had tried to manipulate him, who had believed she could control the game. With quiet, composed certainty, he turned and walked away, leaving Mia to stand alone in the wreckage she had created. She had played a cruel game. But Jason had played it better.